Well, Mayor Papafus, I am so delighted to introduce to you the artist, Brian Malloy, who did this tour de force behind you, and his model, the direct descendant of Harrisburg's founder, John Harris, and his name is Ed Sharp from Canada. He drove all the way.
Well, and a pleasure to meet you. This is a great honor. Yeah. Thank you for coming down. Where in Canada do you currently reside?
We're from Southern Ontario.
Okay, sure.
The Harris family moved to Hamilton, and we're perhaps a half an hour from Hamilton.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, really great. The Pappenfuss family came through southern Canada and Ontario into upstate New York and then down to Maryland and Pennsylvania. So
very good.
We have Canadian roots.
Yeah.
And you, sir, have done an amazing job. This is I have been inspired by this work of art now for quite some time, and it's been a great backdrop.
Hello. I'm Linda. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming all this way. Good to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Wonderful.
Our son,
Yes.
Justin.
Sir, good to see you. Yes. I am honored today to welcome the descendants of John Harris, our founder here in the capital of Harrisburg, all the way from Canada, I understand, which is really remarkable. We welcome you here officially. And we are also joined by the artist Brian Thomas Malloy, who is the painter of the Harris project, which is more than just a painting, it is a project, and it is behind us. And he would like to tell us something about his inspiration and the history and what more we can learn from this inspiring piece of art. So, sir.
It's an amazing bit of history that I learned when I started looking into the history of John Harris. Thankfully, Ed Sharp, who's a direct descendant, was kind enough to participate, which gave it a little more body, personalized it a little bit so that when I looked into the history, I could really get a sense of the scope of it. I mean, it's just some incredibly rich history. So definitely take a look at the book and come down and listen to the audio. There's an audio version of it read by the sports announcer for the U.S. Open tennis circuit, and he gives a really professional presentation of an interactive experience. You could listen, and it explains it in detail, actually. I had local tailors. I researched the clothing. That's a lot of what the research entails. It's a lot of the mostly to do with the cut of the clothing, the cloth that was used. And I tried to approximate it as best as I could to be authentic period clothing. So I reconstructed everything from the ground up, from scratch, and I had local tailors make a costume with fabric that would have been as close as I could find compared to the research of, a thick wool cloth, and I had a costume made. I used replica bear claws to put together a little Native American necklace with some feathers. And it's over here as well with some of the sketches for the painting. So it presents the whole body of the project.
So perhaps we should tell the story to those that are watching at home, just a little bit, because it's obvious to us and we know it.
Right.
But I think it's an important part of Harrisburg history. And let me just say that just 2 days ago for Arbor Day here in Harrisburg, we were in the park and we were trimming trees and beautifying the area around John Harris's grave. And in the 19th century in Harrisburg, believe it or not, the most photographed spot in all of Harrisburg was John Harris's grave. It was a must-see tourist attraction. And yes, it had to do with sort of Victorian notions of sentiment and the mulberry tree, the tree that where this scene is based. Served as the original marking of the site where John Harris was buried. And at some point in the 19th century, they actually moved the grave site back a little further away from the river. Because if you go back and you look at some of the earliest photographs, I think there was concern that John Harris might be washed away by the flooding of the Susquehanna. And And so in Victorian times, they built a Victorian gate. They used a sapling from the original mulberry tree, and this became a place where everyone would come and pay their respects upon, especially as they were traveling the railroad through Pennsylvania and stopping in Harrisburg. But the story of John Harris and his near burning at the base of the mulberry tree is a really important moment. Would you like to tell the story, at least in your own words?
A little
yeah,
bit.
Okay.
It's a story of rescue of good relations with the indigenous peoples that were developed by this new trader from Europe, and he established a trading post and later a ferry. And was actually the son of the founder, the legal founder of Harris, John Harris Jr. That's who built the mansion that we all know as the Dauphin County Historical Society. But the Harris had a trading post, and he was harassed by some Indians Native Americans that traded with him, and for some rum. It was about they traded some furs for some alcohol. And they were intoxicated and got really angry and demanded more. They said, you didn't give us enough rum, and they wanted more rum. And so he wouldn't give it to them, and they tied him to a tree. And the Indians that he traded with across the river in Camp Hill, they came over to rescue him. And that's the scene depicted here, where obviously it's dramatized. It's based on prints and old engravings of the story, where it just shows a dramatic version of that story, where Harris here, tied to the mulberry tree, is being burned by the Native Americans that were drinking the rum and trading the furs. That's a beaver pelt. And then the natives that lived across, the Susquehannock peoples that lived across from in Camp Hill, they came over to rescue John Harris.
And is Hercules in your painting?
Hercules, there's two versions of the story, one told by Robert Harris, the grandson, and others told by friends of Harris that were passed down over the years. The first story was that Hercules was John Harris's slave servant. He was African American, and he sounded the alarm, and he got the Native Americans from across the river and saved John Harris. The other story is that the Susquehannock peoples saw danger and just came over of their own accord. I combined the two stories to give honor to the complete tradition in a creative, interesting way. And so Shaka Hudson, who's the model for the rescuing Native chief who's wearing the cloak, is a local Harrisburg resident who's African American and of Native American descent. So he's a former Broadway dancer, actually, and he modeled for the Union. So in that way, I could combine the two stories.
Yeah, and let me just add, I think part of the story is so appealing is in part because it tells the story of Harrisburg as a crossroads, as a trading center, and as a point of connection. And the point of connection goes back, of course, before John Harris, to the Native Americans that inhabited this. But Harrisburg was chosen because of the crossing over the Susquehanna River. And to say he operated a ferry, we can make that even more visual if we think about this ferry as being almost like a gondola. They would have powered the ferry with long sticks. It wasn't a very deep river at the time. There was no dam. But it was really the only way to transport goods from shore to shore. And, today we have this artificial divide. You may not realize this quite as much, not living in the area, but there is this East Shore, West Shore divide. And our history is based on crossing that divide and bridging that divide and having Harrisburg as the embodiment of the opposite of such.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to change even today, right? Is bring people together and that's sort of what this story can represent and inspire today.
Definitely.
And I must say your version seems to be much more historically accurate and researched than the 19th century engravings, which I think just used sort of stereotypical notions. And if you look at poor John Harris in that, he's stone cold white, you know, and terrified, and the fires are coming. And here, well, he looks a little more comfortable.
Pretty relaxed.
And he looks very much like you, I must say.
It's remarkable.
I wonder how that happened, but the resemblance has passed down from generation to generation.
Yes.
He even included the dog.
Oh, yes, and the dog, right? Well, that's...
Tiffany, our dog that passed away, I memorialized her.
So let this be a reminder of us trying to come together. And I think even the story of Hercules, which, as you noted, did not emerge until the next generation, is really tied to anti-slavery sentiment in antebellum Harrisburg, which was sort of a hotbed of radicalism at the time. And so the founding story of John Harris became a sort of contested point of pride in the community as people battled against slavery, and thus a sort of heroic Hercules emerged. And I don't know if it's myth or what, but nonetheless, this whole quintessential point in our history really was commonly known and taught in every school and a part of the civic identity in Harrisburg in the 19th, and I would say even in the 20th century. And it's only today that perhaps we've sort of forgotten our history, and I think that the Harris Project and this wonderful painting will help remind us of the importance of that history and the lessons it can teach us all today. So it is worthy of honoring, and it is wonderful that you all have come back. And would you like to say a few words about?
I have one or two comments.
I think that would be
bring forward, if I
fantastic.
may.
Yes.
In keeping with the Harris's tradition as traders, I'd like to present to your worship a token of the sweetness of the relationship between the Canadians and the Americans with maple syrup.
Oh, my favorite, pure Canadian maple syrup with the Canadian flag.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well,
That our roots go deep.
Yes,
The roots are very deep.
I think
between
this
us.
would have been traded for quite a high value of goods at the time. Nothing better than that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind gift.
Yes.
And that's right. We will. I will cherish it.
Good. That's what it's intended for.
May I ask, just on the family history side of things, how much does the legacy of John Harris and Harrisburg connect to your current lives today? Is that
We have, we were lucky enough to have our grandmother live till almost 100 years old.
wow?
And when she passed and artifacts were given out, we received a book that was put together by some of the daughters of the Harris family, who are buried in our small village, Linden, Ontario.
Okay.
We have a
Oh,
copy of the book,
wow!
and it brings our relations forward from the originals back in 1700s through to my name is mentioned.
Wow!
in there. My grandmother's name, of course.
The John Harris family in Canada. Wow!
And when we found that,
Yes.
my wife Linda and I decided to do some cleaning up in the yard, and part of that was to move a mulberry tree to a better spot in the yard because it was being challenged.
Little did we know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, now you know. That's
Now
right.
we
That
know.
was nothing more appropriate.
I know.
And may I make one more connection, which is, now this is a true genealogy of the Harris family, and we had some really great news in Harrisburg this week which is that the State Archives is not only going to be expanding and relocating right here in the city of Harrisburg, but they're going to be taking over the city's historical collections and making them really accessible for the first time in a very long time. They're going to be, and they're going to connect this new building with the local history of our city. And I think that is fantastic, so that in the future, families like yourself and other families can learn their history and their genealogy right here. And that's an important thing to me as a student of history myself, and one who appreciates what we can learn from the past. So, what a wonderful, wonderful book.
Yes. Yes.
And we're so glad that you were able to join us. I would like to encourage everyone to get a copy of the Harris Project, or perhaps to download the audio version. And City Hall, as you know, is open, free of charge on a daily basis. Come on in, put your ear pods in, and listen and view this wonderful exhibit. I get a lot of questions about it, and as you can see, I think it matches sort of 19th century conceptions of things. It is very interesting, and as you see, even in this engraving, it is right on the, not historically accurate, but right on the banks.
Yes.
But they say, and this is true, that a lot of the rural cemetery movement and the American cemetery movement was directly tied to sort of making sure that the first generation of settlers, who were buried in family plots and whatnot, weren't going to disappear as America had greater development. So the Harrisburg Cemetery was sort of formed at the same time that John Harris's grave was moved back, and basically, so today he is not the grave does not actually mark the exact point of the burning.
And that perhaps was the trading post?
That looks like it could have been.
The original?
Yeah, it looks a little fort-like. And
Right.
look at the stockades. Yeah. So,
Well, there were different times
yeah,
then.
some of the earlier pictures that I have, early photographs from like the 19th century, they still it still was a fairly steep cliff like it is today, and then it became what was of course called Harris Park, and Harris Park was the first park in the Harrisburg Park system, which eventually has become incorporated into Riverfront Park. But the original park for Harrisburg was the Harris Park. It has John Harris's name engraved on it with the eagle. And this was something that the city acquired years ago. And this was something that will eventually go into our archival collection. I'm going to be careful with the hinge, but you'd have your writing utensils, the ink bottle, and this would be the travel desk. And so he could go, maybe he could take it on the ferry and then, set up a little trading post or something and take the ledgers and the account books. So what an amazing piece of history right there.